I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Robert Bryan, the founder of Karate Combat. Robert, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on the show, Ashton.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to dive into karate. Seems like a trend that's been coming back from the 80s, and it's actually pretty exciting. I've seen some of the Karate Combat fights that your team has put together, and I'm excited to hear about the Web3 integrations that you're working on. So let's just dive straight into it. I'd love to get your explanation on what is exactly Karate Combat, and then how are you guys looking at introducing Web3, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Great. So I'll start with the traditional business from a high level. Karate Combat, while it has the name karate in the name, obviously, we basically become the top striking league worldwide. And what that means to your viewers, I'm not sure how familiar they might be with UFC and MMA, but in mixed martial arts, if the two combatants, they get in the ring, obviously they're having a fight. If the fight goes to the ground, they're essentially grappling or wrestling, and that part of the fight can take long periods of time. And I'm actually interested in that part of the sport as well. I do that myself, but I think for many mainstream fans, they don't understand that part of it. The major way that our rule set is different is that if the fighters go to the ground, after 3 seconds, they stand back up. And there's a number of other differences. So when you look at the clips online, you might say, oh, this looks similar to mixed martial arts. But if you actually watch the entire event with the rule set we've put together, there's the entire event almost looks like a highlight reel. The fighters are far apart. They're trying flying kicks. They're bouncing off our patented pit ball that we use. And in total, it actually looks much different. And when we started the sports league, originally, we looked at the traditional landscape, and we said, look, you have the UFC here that's been extremely successful. And I think a lot of non-athletes, just sort of business-focused individuals that came in the space that weren't big fans of combat sports, I think they had the incorrect notion, that big reason that the UFC was so successful is because it was a brutal sport, no holds barred. So you've seen, bare knuckle boxing, you've seen a lot of people that have copied the UFC rule set. And we don't think that really works. We think it's a winner-takes-all market that the UFC will end up with. So what we decided to do was create a more mainstream combat sport. So we wanted, while we have real fights, real knockouts, real action, the goal from a traditional sports league standpoint was to create something as mainstream as possible and separate from the UFC. The other major thing that we did, we had a unique advantage. We obviously have a number of Olympic karatekas that are fighting in our league, but the Olympic version of the sport, it's not full contact. Even though these fighters train full contact, that version isn't. So when we changed the rule set over to what we use today, we're able to change a whole host of things that a sport like ours, as a huge following that's been around for over 200 years, normally would not be able to change. And what we did was we adjusted the rule set and the entire way the sport was designed to work with the way that the younger generation is consuming this media. So in addition to being fast action, little grappling, we actually shoot the entire event with cinematic cameras. And we actually render the background of the event real time using the Unreal Engine. So it gives everything about our event a totally new look and feel. And while it's real combat sport, you actually get almost a blood sport sort of Bruce Lee movie style vibe. And I think it's a really unique event, and we've had an amazing response. So I'll go over, how we've gotten here and more specifics later on. But from a high level, over the past 4 years, we've grown extremely quickly. We're on the top sports network in over 100 countries worldwide. We have over 2 million linear viewers. That's TV per episode. Over 6 million digital viewers, and last month we did 175 million viewers across social. So we've really grown. And we're taking a lot of the traditional guys are looking at us and they said, look, you've created a very unique business. And now we're looking to move forward and do something that I don't think a lot of them do or really agree with us on, but we think it's critical to moving forward. And we're moving the entire league into a DAO. It's already been done. The assets have already been set up in a Cayman Foundation company that's entirely directed by the token holders. And we're looking to move forward with a number of Web3 concepts that we think aren't something that's tangential to what we're doing. We think we're really embracing the Web3 tools, and that it's going to accelerate our growth in our traditional business even further. And we're kind of combining these tools into everything that we're doing, and we're really excited about what we think is going to happen going forward.
Wow, super exciting, Robert, and it's great to hear of the success and that it's continuing to grow. You know, I'm a personal fan of like the Bruce Lee style movies and karate, and I'm not that much of a fan of UFC, and I feel like the audiences will be similar but also different in a sense that I'm sort of more in favor of one. Have you guys seen fighters as well as the audience sort of move from UFC over to karate combat?
Well, I think there's a number of different groups of people, different markets that kind of approach it differently. I think within the UFC, you have some group of a large portion of their fans, I believe, were traditional martial artists. And by the way, we have Taekwondo fighters. We even have some MMA fighters that specialized in striking. Anyone's welcome that follows these striking rules. So it really incorporates a large number of single sport martial arts. And I think that core martial arts user base, they love fighting, they love the action. But I think that a lot of the cultural aspects and the values are a little bit different that they subscribe to. For instance, jiu-jitsu followers, even though they only focus on grappling, I think if you look at the culture, it's a lot more about respect. And it wouldn't be quite the type of thing that you would see in a UFC press conference where they're talking about, attacking each other's families and whatnot. So I think there's a big difference there. I think with that group, we do very well. And then the other thing is, obviously the UFC has become very, very commercialized. And I think there's something to be said about fighting versus other sports where it just, it needs to be sort of more, more of a type of thing where you don't know what's going to happen almost, right? And originally, when we were very, very early, we were actually on Fight Pass. We're not on that anymore. But I think that when we were on there, just anecdotally, the comments we got from UFC fans were quite interesting. They said, "Hey, this reminds me of the original UFC." Where the people would walk out and there'd be a sumo wrestler versus someone else, and it's something I'd never seen before, and I really didn't know what was going to happen. So I think a lot of those fans, gravitated over to us. And I think another group of fans that don't really apply to the UFC is sort of more the core fans that don't like a lot of blood, gore. I think a big group of that is actually women. So if you look at the UFC, they're highly male. We started that way, but a lot of the events, both genders have enjoyed the events very much. And I think, honestly, we're probably not getting, the same people that are watching, tennis or some other sports. I think we're sort of an in-between bridge between, the older style of combat sports, MMA, and the more broader world of sports that has a much bigger target market.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And with this success, I feel like, starting the league 4 years ago and now building up, I feel like now in this past year or two, there's been more momentum moving towards that, and sort of having that established business built up is in your guys' favor. Why do you see now as the perfect time to be moving into a DAO-like structure for karate combat?
Well, I think a lot of people out there are making the move for the wrong reasons. Either they want funding, for something, or they're doing something that just doesn't quite fit with what the tools can be used for in the best way. And across all of crypto, even when we talk to investors, we say, hey, what are you using your cryptocurrency for? There's a lot of uses out there, but a lot of it's just store value, buying other cryptocurrency, etc. And what we're really looking to do is drive utilization. And the tools for what we were doing, honestly, they weren't even available a year ago. But we're using a lot of the tools, everything from some of the constrained delegation that you see that have been developed in DeFi, some of those tools. I mean, our business wouldn't work without snapshot type functionality. I mean, I can list 4 or 5 things that honestly weren't even available a year or 2 ago. And as someone who's always followed crypto and, is founder of a sports league, I've always looked for a way to combine the two. And I think now, the tools are there. And honestly, we had a great idea that we think makes a lot of sense. And as soon as we discovered that sort of utility, we raced to move forward with it. So if you want, I can kind of go through, our core Web3 strategy and why we're kind of, it leads into all this, of course. So just from a high level, we've taken the assets, and we've obviously moved them offshore. We've set a map. We've set up all the background programming to launch a token, all the things along those lines that you see everywhere else. The one difference I would say between us and a lot of the other projects, from what I've seen, it's unclear what the token holders actually control, and there's lack of transparency throughout the industry. Some people do a great job of it. Some people don't. Some people say they're doing a great job, but it comes down to 3 guys in a multi-sig wallet somewhere. And what we're doing is we're going all the way. So there's no stock, there's no side assets. 100% of everything we've created and we own, of a league, not a team, by the way. You've seen a few teams do something like this, but a league has never done this before. So actually the league has all the IP, fire contracts, distribution contracts, everything, that sits in the foundation. There's nothing else on the side that the previous owners own, period. So we're going all the way and we're being 100% transparent. The other thing that we think provides some value, once again, this is more of a normal application, is when you look at other things that people care about and vote on, whether it's like a DeFi protocol, you always see sort of low participation, more or less. I think that's a big problem. With us, our fans are so passionate. You would be surprised the online arguments we see about who's fighting who. We changed the rule set from, we're going to add one, either knees or elbows because they weren't allowed previously. We put that up for vote and we got an enormous response. So I think having a sports league, and particularly a combat sports league, and allowing the fans to be involved in that. Some other sports that are more complicated, I don't think there's quite as perfect an application, but for this, they really care about the matchups. They really care about the fire of science. So I think we'll get incredible participation just from the sort of traditional DAO application. The other major thing that we're moving forward with that's completely new, we invented it on our own. So you'll get airdropped, your Karate token, right? And, it has, all these different, voting rights, etc. But in addition to that, before every fight comes, we're calling this up-only gaming. You can pick a fighter that you think is going to win, or you can pick a group of fighters that you think are going to win. If your fighter wins, you get more tokens. If your fighter loses, you don't lose any tokens whatsoever. Obviously, this isn't regulated gambling whatsoever, but it provides the token holder to have a strong vested interest in the fight. We recently saw a report that 50% of the younger generation only care about a sporting event if they have a highly vested interest in the outcome, which normally would mean some sort of bet, something along those lines. This is different from that, but we think it provides the proper incentives to really motivate our fans. So this DAO structure, allows us traditional things, having the owners involved. It allows us to do a very large airdrop. So that's another customer acquisition tool. And then the big new thing is what I just described. And for the user, they don't even know it's crypto, frankly. That's why we believe it's so interesting. It can just be one of our fans on Instagram. He airdropped his coin, if that's the way we choose to do it. And it just says, click here, you have an app, you have these tokens, and you can do whatever you want with them. But there is a bout coming up, and if you pick the fighter, you click the fighter. It's a very simple app, but it's very, very nicely done. And then he's going to be watching the fight because he's going to get more tokens if his fighter wins. And the other thing is, because he can't lose tokens, it's a free option for him to sort of participate in these contests. So, that's sort of the core of the idea. And, we think that will increase our user base tremendously. We're competing with other leagues that have to spend tons of money to kind of have 10 touch points to the customer to get them to care about a fighter he's never heard of. That's a very, very hard process to do. With us, we think we have another way to engage the customer that makes much more sense economically, is much more, a plan that we can put together much more quickly and has a positive feedback and provides more value to our token holders and our viewers.
Very cool, Robert. And where exactly is this stage of this at? Is the tokens already in the app, or has the airdrop already happened?
So the airdrop is happening early December. We actually just announced our plans a few weeks ago, but this is something that we've been working on for over a year at this point. But yes, the app is in the final stages of testing, and we're going to be good to go early December, and we're having an event following the launch as well where people will be able to use their tokens.
Very cool. And how often do the fights happen?
So generally we have 12 fights a year, once a month. Our schedule for next year should come out in the next couple of months or so.
Very cool. And, I've asked this question to other gaming projects. Often, for example, when a game comes out, there's an initial hype and like a lot of people are using it, and then the company has to find ways to have user retention and make sure that people don't lose interest. Do you have any strategy for, say there's an airdrop, and of course everyone likes free tokens, and then earning free tokens on voting on fights is obviously a bonus, but some people may vote once, watch a fight, and then sort of lose interest, and they're not losing anything by not watching more fights down the road. So how do you? I almost turn that back your direction. So that's why I think our particular business, being in sports, is perfect for this application. So do you watch any sports? What's your favorite sport? Soccer.
Do they have to do anything to get you to watch the next match? Are you going to stop watching if there's not a fan giveaway? Maybe you watch more if they're good, or you watch less if they're bad. But other than that, so there's been a number of studies done behind this, and I actually saw someone asking on Twitter the other day, what businesses have the best retention in the world? And honestly, sports leagues have a strong argument for that. And even at the ownership level, we ran the numbers, I don't remember exactly, but the average NFL team trades hands once ever. It was something like 25 years. There's a huge connection between people's sports and their identities, and it has one of the strongest customer retention rates out there. So of course we'll be continuing to grow what we're doing. I believe there will be more people that grow on top of us, but frankly, with a game, you have a hype up front. With a fighter, the first time you see him fight, oh, that was interesting. Then you see him again. Your natural sort of course of involvement with other people's stories and watching them progress builds on its own. Frankly, we almost don't have to do anything, and I think other sports leagues have kind of seen that happen and seen that come together.
Definitely. And between the fights, say there's a 1 month gap, is there activity on the app or within the DAO, or is there other ways that you're continuing to keep people engaged?
So, obviously a way that fight sports differ from other sports is most sports have a season. You have them every other week. There's a variety of reasons why that doesn't make sense for fight sports. One, I would say just for our traditional fans, the way we do that is we still have new content, right? The build up to a fight is as important as the fight, right? So yeah, we have one fight, you know, that ends in a certain day. The next week, you know, obviously we're promoting, you know, all the action that happened, the different knockouts that engages fans. And at that point, we're already 3 weeks out to the next event. We've probably already announced the next fight, and there's all sorts of content, things along those lines that are keeping our fans motivated continually, and that just builds up to the fight. So it's a pretty sort of steady process with our traditional fans. You know, with Web3 fans, obviously, the Web3 part of our community, you know, obviously we think we have a very easy path to transitioning them to be part of our core fan base. But in addition to that, we plan to offer a number of things specific to that community. So we've been talking to, this isn't public yet, so I won't mention the names, but all the other communities that are similar to us. We're going to run a number of cross-platform engagement contests with them. You know, you can kind of see some of the things you could do, but having contests between different communities, you know, who does the best job picking fighters, things along those lines, and we'll do, you know, reciprocal projects when they have big events coming along. So on the Web3 side, you know, I think in between the fights, the different tools that we're bringing, different communities we're interacting with, in a number of new ways, will sort of keep us front of mind.
Okay, good to know. And you know, you mentioned you're 4 years into this. I'd love to hear your vision for 4 years from now, with the DAO and the karate token involved. Where do you see Karate Combat?
So I think, you know, to date, we've had, you know, we've obviously had amazing growth. In some of in third-party stats, we're now the 30th biggest sport on Facebook. But when you look at the top 10, you're talking about, you know, NBA, NBA, soccer, all, you know, Formula One, and there is a big difference between where we are now and those guys. The other interesting thing is, as sports become more globalized, the view of many investors, which I agree with, is that 3 of the big winners are going to be NBA, soccer, and combat sports. And that's why you've seen a number of dollars, investor dollars, go into combat sports over the past 5 years at, I would say, relatively high valuations based on the potential for them to grow. So my goal over the next 5 years would be to use these Web3 tools to win out in that space. And I think when you look at those other 3 categories, I don't think anyone's going to surpass the NBA. I don't think, you know, I don't think soccer is going anywhere. I don't think there's going to be a new World Cup, or much of that is going to be unseated, even though obviously the clubs move around. But I think within combat sports, there's a unique opportunity to gain a lot of market share very quickly as this change occurs, and it's happening faster in combat sports than any other segment in the sports landscape.
Very cool. And you know, I've seen in the UFC and more so in boxing as well, it seems like it gets to the point where, you know, there's a fight and the fighters are getting millions of dollars, or, you know, Mr. Money's coming in and winning like 50 million for winning the fight. Do you expect sort of big money to flow into karate as well as you continue to grow?
So that's actually an interesting point that I'd like to go over. So in addition to the other plans that we kind of spoke about regarding the DAO, so when these fights come, you know, our users can pick a fighter. There's 10 fights in every card, more or less. So I can take all of my tokens. I can pick one fighter with them to win, or I can pick 10. And honestly, from what we've seen across combat sports, is that you're going to want to pick the most interesting fight to you, not necessarily who is the best fighter. You know, we've seen that over and over. The other problem that we have in combat sports is there's some fighters that are incredibly good promoters, and those have been the winners. And then you have a lot of fighters that are incredible fighters, but they aren't as able to promote their fights. And a lot of that is a disconnect. I think a lot of the way other leagues have handled that is said, look, let's just promote the guys that are good, and, you know, let go of the guys that aren't, or just promote certain athletes. And the athlete's incentive is very unclear there. You know, it's very hard to go to them and say, hey, look, you know, you do X, Y, Z, and you're going to get this many more fans. What we're doing is every bout, we're paying a percentage of the total token pool that's allocated to a fighter for him to win or lose. We're paying him a percentage of that pool. So he sees his pool go up and down live based on the amount of interest he's generating. And it's a set percentage. So the token goes up, he gets paid more. And by the way, we've already given all of our fighters tokens, and they'll all have a participation in this. So I think crypto does an incredibly good job of aligning incentives, and I think there's a huge incentive problem in combat sports. And we think this is a great way to solve it, and we think it'll be successful going forward. In addition to tokens, this is all extra for them. You know, we've always paid very well at Karate Combat. You haven't heard any fighters complain about, you know, what we've been paying them. And they'll continue to get their cash payment as well. I think this is a great way to avoid that going forward and set up a structure from day one that aligns incentives and allows everybody to grow together.
That's a great point, Robert. And you know, if the fans are using their karate tokens to bet and the fighters own the tokens as well, then obviously the incentives are going to be aligned there. So that's great to hear. So thanks for that. Now, you mentioned that the airdrop and sort of the DAO structure is coming in December, in the coming months here. What is the best way for fans and people that are interested to get involved with it right now and learn about it before it comes out?
Well, karate.com is where our league is based, karate.com/airdrop. Our white paper's on there. You can sign up to learn more information about the airdrop. You know, the specifics of how we distribute the tokens, obviously, you know, won't be public until it happens. But I think that the main way is just to follow our traditional business, you know, learn about the fighters and then learn what we're doing, you know, through our white paper with our Web3 plans. And, you know, I can encourage, you know, fans, investors, everyone to take a look at it because I think it's pretty interesting and honestly, it'll be fun. I think we offer a lot more entertainment value. You know, we have more followers than almost any crypto project out there, period. And then there's a reason for that. So I encourage people to check out our product and have fun in the process.
Awesome. Sounds great, Robert. And I did check it out. The fights look pretty exciting. I will be watching the upcoming one after the airdrop, and I'm going to take a look at the airdrop myself. And I will put the link for karate.com and the airdrop and all of the other socials in the description box below. So thank you so much for taking the time. All the best with everything in Karate Combat, and let's follow up in the near future.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks again for having me on the show.